The origin of life. One of the greatest challenges to evolutionary science has been to explain how life began. To approach this question, one must consider what life is and when, where, and how life began. We begin our study within the natural sciences with the question of what? What is life? What is the essence of life? This question has come up in the discussion of whether the chemicals and structures in ALH 84001, which is the meteorite from Mars, did or did not constitute evidence that there was life on Mars billions of years ago. Unfortunately, this question has proven very difficult to answer. Is artificial intelligence a form of life? If, for example, robots like the one I built on my desk can construct copies of themselves, does that mean that they are alive? Is the earth alive? Ancient writings, such as the book or Biblos, make numerous references to life. It is on this basis that creationists, for example, have launched numerous attacks on the scientific discipline and the hypotheses of the origin of life. However, these ancient documents did not mean the same thing as biologists or scientists mean when they refer to life today. The book of Genesis, or the book of the beginning, for example, said nothing about bacteria, nothing about genes, nothing about any kind of cladiographics or anything like that. And so the Genesis term breath of life, or breath, even with the Greek translation of the Old Testament, pneuma was the Greek word for breath, inner life, or life. Also spirit as well. Even today, people use the word in many different ways. In the debate about whether cloned human embryos are alive, the disagreement is not over biological life, which they certainly have, but human life. And this confusion is even greater when investigating the origin of life on the early Earth. And geologists and biologists and people who study biochemistry are trying to understand the basic building blocks of life. The following are some of the characteristics that mostly is in mind when scientists refer to life. For example, firstly, life consists of complex carbon-based molecules. All life on Earth is based upon the element of carbon, which is represented as C on the periodic table of elements. Is it possible that life in a different part of the universe might be based upon a different element, or perhaps on pure energy rather than that of matter itself? The second possibility cannot now be investigated. However, the element silicon, for example, represented as Si on the periodic table of elements, has some chemical properties similar to that of carbon. Might life somewhere in the universe be based upon silicon instead of carbon? This is unlikely to occur because silicon is much heavier than carbon. Therefore, an active moving organism made out of complex molecules with silicon would need to live in a world with much less gravity. Such a planet would probably also have insufficient gravity in order to retain an atmosphere that is needed for the eventual development of photosynthesis. Carbon is also able to cycle through our planet from CO2 in the air through photosynthesis, through the food chain, through decomposition, and back into the air, because CO2 is a gas. For example, silicon, oxygen, however, or is a mineral, and that mineral is called quartz. A food chain probably could not be based upon that. Silicon-based molecules would have limited complexity, and although some molecules involved in biological processes are simple, such as nitrous oxide that functions in the human body, most biologically active molecules are complex. Perhaps, therefore, carbon-based life is the only possibility. Fortunately, there is a lot of carbon in the universe, and it would have to be an element that would be sufficient for the physics of our universe. They would have to correlate with that. The second thing is that life operates in a water medium. A solid medium would be too slow, and a gaseous medium too chaotic for life processes. Water, or H2O, hydrogen with two oxygens. Again, quartz is silicon with two oxygens. But water um, appears to be the only liquid that is abundant enough in the universe and that it's suitable as a medium for biological processes on our planet. Although some scientists speculate that liquid methane, as on one of Saturn's moons, for example, may be a suitable medium. Thirdly, life forms obtain energy and matter from the environment and process it into new forms, releasing waste products. Fourthly, life forms have the ability to organize themselves rather than depending on externally imposed structure. Let's see. Fifthly, life forms have the ability to respond to environmental conditions and information. Uh, Sixthly, life forms have a genetic system which stores information for structures and functions. As a part of that, the genetic information controls the growth and maintenance of the organism. Also, the genetic information is copied then when reproduction occurs, and then after that, mutations in the genetic information allow evolution to occur. Seventhly, life forms are enclosed within the membranes that keep their processes distinct and separate from the environment. Today, all life processes are encapsulated within cells, cell membranes to be precise. And these cell membranes prevent biological systems from being disrupted and dispersed into the environment around them. One of the simplest definitions of life, yet still complex, was offered by Leslie Orgel, he was a biochemist, and he refers to life, for example, or life forms, as Citroëns, making humorous reference to the French automobile Citroën. Complex information transforming, reproducing objects that evolve by natural selection. And again, he calls it Citroëns, or Citroëns, and each letter within that, CT or CITROENS, Citroëns, is complex information transforming, reproducing objects that evolve by natural selection. And within a century, therefore, the scientific community has changed from considering natural selection as a hypothesis to making natural selection a part of life's very definition. And indeed, in evolutionary processes, bedrock, one of the three foundational bedrocks of biology. But anyway, we also have the when. All right. So we've just covered what. What is life? And we need to also cover the question of when did life originate, and where did life originate? All right, and then how did life originate?